All right, so lastly, we have this case study of New Orleans, which will kind of highlight the importance of history and culture. So, the economist, the cold economist, we have this location fundamental theory combined with increasing returns to scale. Cities are located where they're close to good resources. Resources go away, and if the increasing returns to scale go away in the form of the city's destroyed, that would suggest the city will not come back. The city should not come back. However, in the real world, we're not just dealing with cold economics. We're dealing with people, we're dealing with culture, we're dealing with history. And New Orleans is a nice example of how important these forces are. And so New Orleans gets hit with Hurricane Katrina. And you can see the population, over half the population leaves New Orleans, okay, or is displaced. Their homes are destroyed by the hurricane. And then it recovers, not to its pre-hurricane level, but it definitely does recover. And the recovery is strongest where the locational advantage is strongest, which is the downtown core, where the increasing returns of scale are, where the location to the good resources are, which in this case would be, the good resources would be the history that's associated with like Bourbon Street and the tourist attractions, and then also the port there. So we would look at this and say, oh, this is a great example of location advantages. This is the Davis and Weinstein story. This is similar to a disaster befalling a city. The disaster in Japan was, of course, World War II, the bombings. The disaster here is a literal disaster. The hurricane and New Orleans bounced back, location fundamentals, okay? And you see the economy has largely recovered as well. But there's also other real forces at play in that 200 billion was spent to rebuild New Orleans. And it's unclear whether it would have come back without that money. That money was spent because of the cultural importance of New Orleans. New Orleans has this rich history. If you talk to Europeans when they come to the US or other tourists, basically there are certain US cities that they want to visit. Top of that list is New Orleans. It's like New Orleans, San Francisco, Vegas, maybe, LA to some extent. There are certain cities that people want to visit. New Orleans is always on that list for its its huge significance. I have friends who just love the city. They love going there. They love the vibe there. I've only been there. I've only been there once, and I had a lot of work to do. So I was there for a conference, and I had so much work to do. It was like I had all this. It was crazy how much work I had to do. And let me tell you, I did not enjoy my time there because it is maybe the worst city to try to get work done in. I mean, I had a fraternity in my hotel. I was staying in the same hotel as me on my floor. There's no good coffee shops. There's like no coffee shops where you could do work. So I couldn't work in my room because of all the partying. Couldn't work at a coffee shop. The power went out, the water, it was a disaster. So I didn't have the best experience in New Orleans, but it does have cultural significance. And so we can see that in the form of the federal aid, where, really this was kind of a project to maintain, this city's cultural place in the US. Now, the economist, or some economists, Ed Glazer would certainly argue that this was a waste. Ed Glazer would say, and in your book, he says, look, you spent $200 billion, okay? And this was in the early 2000s. This is probably equivalent to roughly 400 billion today. Just give everybody $200,000, or what would equivalent today, just give everybody $400,000. Give everybody in New Orleans 400 grand. And if they want to go back to New Orleans, they want to rebuild New Orleans, they got 400 grand. You can build a house with 400 grand, go back to your plot of land, build a house. If you're renting, guess what? Now you can buy a house. If you want to buy a house in New Orleans, you can buy a house in New Orleans. Or you pull together, build an apartment complex. Give the people the money and let them make the decision. And if New Orleans really is, as culturally important as, the government says it is, then the people would do that. This is the Ed Glazer argument. And if they don't want to live in New Orleans, they have $400,000 to make a fresh start at a new place. By Glazer's argument, New Orleans is a city that has lost its locational advantage. It has its roots as a big port city, a center for shipping in this area. It's no longer that center. It's no longer strategically important. It's lost its key resource. It has another key resource, which is tourism. But essentially in terms of locational advantages is much declined. So Glazer says give the people money, and let them choose. Let them choose to rebuild New Orleans or go somewhere else. Now, the argument would be, oh, the government's needing to build roads and that sort of thing. They need to rebuild the infrastructure of the town. Maybe, but you could also do that with the tax base of the people that move back there. Anyways, there's no right or wrong answer here. This is a policy debate. This is a policy debate as to what is best. Have the government rebuild the city, or just give the money the money you would spend directly to the people. Okay, just something to think about, or something to think about in your head. What would you do? Okay, all right. Next, we're going to talk about external increasing returns to scale, not internal increasing returns to scale, external increasing returns to scale. What is that? Find out next time in economics, urban economics. That's the name of the course.